You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast hosted by Matt Franks and Zach Bechtold. We hope you enjoy this week's show, and you can find out more about us by going online at beardedtheologians.com, where you can pick up a few t-shirts, listen to a few old episodes, and find ways that you can connect with us. Thank you for listening. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold. And today we have somebody I'm really excited about. I'm always excited about our guests, but our guests today we go back a long ways, like a long time. And we have Reverend Kaury Edwards on the podcast with us today, who I went to college with the first time I went to college before I got kicked out, and kind of watched come through the United Methodist Church, and I served his home church as a youth pastor, and I don't know, we just go a long ways back. Kaury, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be with you. And yeah, we were in college before I dropped out of I wasn't kicked out, but I dropped out of college. It's been really cool to kind of see how we've both left our little nest of West Texas, and God is doing some cool things.
I don't know that you could pick two people out of the Panhandle of Texas and be like, these guys are going to be United Methodist pastors, and would have picked either of us. I mean, like, yeah, it's those guys.
Yeah.
That's fun. Well, thanks for being on. Would you tell our listeners a little bit about you? You know, who you are, where you're from, what you do?
Yeah. So right now I'm serving in the Western North Carolina Conference, but I'm originally from Northwest Texas. I grew up in a small town outside of Amarillo, in a town with way more cattle than people. And when you got that whiff of fun cattle smell, people enjoyed it.
That's the smell of money.
Went to a small Southern Baptist undergrad and dropped out about 2 years in because I was just so dissatisfied, and went and served with UMVM, actually, and found a paid position with UMVM, which is even more fun. But went to South Korea for a year, served with the Korean Methodist Church, and did some really cool things. And while I was there, I got to serve with a lady named Lita Gorham, Rev.Dr. Lita Gorham, and she was a retired Methodist elder. And she kind of beat into me lovingly that God was calling me to sacramental privileges and elder, kind of the elder pathway, and something I fought because being a pastor of a local church just seemed so awful and boring and just everything I didn't want in life. And so I kind of reluctantly went back to Wayland and finished up because that's where my credits were. And from there, really looked at seminaries and realized my GPA was awful. And so one, it was where's affordable and where can I actually get in? And wound up going to Asbury because it was free. And they let me in. They let me in. I at a reduced rate and whatever. But when we got there, we thrived. When we went to Wilmore for the first time, we drove through Wilmore, and my wife Ashley said, "Hey, I think we drove, like, we missed it. Like, we're gone." And so we found home there in like Lexington, Kentucky, and it was really beautiful. Did a MDiv and a THM there. My THM was focused on basically how do we do ministry to kind of an eclectic pluralist in a kind of desecularized society that we were living in. And I use some, I'm going to say it, don't judge me too much, okay, but I used some John Howard Yoder. But I had a Mennonite as a mentor, and used some of his work, and a guy named Peter Berger, and did some church planting in Kentucky, and just stayed in the Kentucky Conference because they gave me some opportunities to do some cool ministries in Lexington and Louisville. And we were in the Kentucky Conference for 14 years, and then this thing called disaffiliation happened, and the Methodist Church made a huge step forward in a beautiful way, but it caused a lot of pain and suffering. And the Kentucky Conference, even before the disaffiliation process, we just knew things weren't going to turn out well in Kentucky. And I had just done a doctorate at Duke, and um, some doors opened up for us to come to Western North Carolina that should not have opened. And so 3.5 years ago, we made that move to Western North Carolina and have loved it. And it was scary, um, but are here. We're here in Western North Carolina. I served a small kind of rural church for 3 years as kind of get to know you kind of opportunity, and it really was beautiful. Was a place that I never would have picked for myself, but hey, we're Methodists, right?
That's right.
I don't ever get to pick for myself, but and then this summer we moved here to Elkin, North Carolina, which is another church I probably would not on paper have picked for myself. But it's located in the Yadkin Valley, which is right below the Blue Ridge Mountains, and it's wine country. So I've got like 45 wineries around me. It's awesome.
Nice.
We've got some wine makers and vineyard owners in our church, and it's a cool little town of like 4,000 people. Again, I don't. I would not say I'm a rural person. I would say I'm more urban focused, but have found these first 6 months to be just beautiful. And it's a church that is very old, very traditional, and very much a first church kind of church, but are really willing to do some cool, innovative, risk-taking kind of saying, hey, we know who we are and where we've been, and we know our tradition, but we also know that if we don't attempt to adapt and do some cool things outside of the box, that we're going to die. And that's exactly where I wanted to go. But on paper, I would have chosen a place like this. So, so I praise God. I praise God that the bishop knew better than I did.
Right.
You know,
and I love that. That's I don't know if you find yourself in that circle of non-United Methodist clergy on occasion, and they're like, "What? How? Why do y'all do y'all system the way you do?" And my answer is always kind of the same as what you just unpacked. I don't I don't have to choose, right? Like there's people who are much smarter than I am, prayerfully consider, and we get to follow God into places we never would have picked on paper, right? Like, wouldn't be in Montana without it, wouldn't have been anywhere without it, and served some really awesome communities and congregations that I would have never pointed at a map and said, yeah, let's go there, So,
and even 5 years ago, when the Western North Carolina doors started opening up for us to move here, I mean, never would I have said, man, I want to go and be a part of the Western North Carolina conference. But I had a conversation with a friend that was he was about to turn in his orders and go and be a part of one of these other denominations that's kind of popped up. And I love that person, and we still are in friendship and connect in with each other. But he said, dude, you need to come to Western North Carolina. Can I give your name to the director of ministerial services here, a lady named Kim Ingram, she's awesome. And one conversation led to another, and doors opened up in ways that they shouldn't have, like I said earlier. And I mean, we're here, and we never in my wildest dreams would I have thought North Carolina is where I want to live.
Yep. Yeah, I totally resonate with that.
I was like, I think both of us would agree that's kind of basically how we ended up where we're at. You know.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, Kaury, you have a book out called "Failure Sparked Innovation," and that's why you're here today. I mean, I'll talk about all the things, right? But we want to give you some time to talk about your book and kind of unpack that for us a little bit. So, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. So while I was doing my doctorate at Duke, a doctorate of ministry is not anything like real, that takes a whole lot of brain power. But the one of the reasons I chose Duke is they talk about how a lot of the people that come through their DMin program actually are able to take the work that they do. It's not just like a capstone project or anything like that. Like you're doing real like academic research and whatnot, that a lot of them have opportunities to transition into books. And, you know, why not? Like, if you're going to do all that work, why not have the opportunity to do that? And so, and also Duke's kind of basic DMin program is all on like leadership innovation and whatnot. And that's really what I wanted to kind of focus on. And so I applied like last second, got in, and while in it, got to sit with three people that had a huge influence on me. One is a guy named Ken Hood. He's Presbyterian, best Presbyterian I know. Like, he's incredible. And then I got to sit with Will Willimon, and genuinely like a wonderful person. Like, really cares about students almost as much as he cares about himself. And I'm going on record to say that, right? Like, he literally loves students, and when you're one of his students, like, he pours into you, and I really respect that about anyone who really is a professor. Like, he welcomed me in and loved on me. And then the last person was Greg Jones, who at the time was the dean of the Divinity School. And so between the three of them and just kind of the work and life that I'd lived, stumbled onto this topic of failure because, hey, I'm a United Methodist pastor. And one thing I've done, whether that was in ministry or real life, a lot is fail. And I failed a lot, and a lot in really well, in good ways, and oftentimes I failed in awful ways. And so I said, how can I look at this where we in the church could learn how to fail better? Because there's a difference between failure and sin, and oftentimes we don't differentiate that. And oftentimes in churches, when we do fail, so think about one of the examples I use in the book is I talk about a church that I served in Kentucky that when I got there, the year before, they had attempted to do a ministry of VBS in a trailer park that they had identified not too far from the church. They didn't have any relationship with that trailer park before. They decided to just show up and do a VBS there. And so they do everything wrong, right? Like, they don't build relationships. They don't even ask if a VBS is needed. And they just kind of show up. They do a VBS there. And the kids were really difficult for them to handle. And they struggled. And they struggled with the parents. And they struggled with everything. It was just like an epic fail. And when they got done, all they said is, we're never going to do anything like this ever again. They didn't ask deeper questions. They didn't learn from it. And so in the book, I kind of try to define like what is good failure and what is bad failure. And I first kind of identify, hey, I'm not talking about moral failures, right, or ethical failures, right? I'm not talking about the pastor that does things where they exploit people in their churches, whether that's money, whether that's sexually, whether that I'm not talking about that type of failure. I'm talking about ministry failure, where you attempt something and it goes bad. And so how do we learn? And so good failure is failure that we can actually learn from and apply in the future when we try other things. Bad failure is when we just don't learn. And we just say, hey, we're never going to do that again. Or you get that person in church that they're new, they're fired up, and they say, man, I really want to try X. You give them the opportunity to try a new ministry, and it just doesn't go bad, whether that's because they don't have the time, they don't have the skills, maybe it just doesn't work out. Like, whatever it is, it fails. And then you also have churches that'll go, oh, well, remember we gave that person this ministry opportunity. It didn't go so hot. We're never going to let them lead another ministry. And that's been my experience at so many churches, whether that was growing up in church, being a youth pastor of a church, being a church planter, doing or going into an established church and working. And um, I think that's the wrong approach. And so I try to say how, with kind of my doctoral work, is try to say, hey, how can we help the church fail better? Because failure, in my opinion, is a means to innovation. I mean, it is, we have to fail. We're going to fail when you try and attempt stuff. Um, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
And I would even argue Jesus fails. Right? There's times Jesus fails, and that may be a little controversial, but right,
Well,
like
there are a
Jesus,
few stories. I mean,
there was a blind guy that Jesus took a few times to get him
Hmm.
to be able to see. I mean,
Hmm.
some could consider the first attempt a failure. I mean, he
Right.
was still seeing blurry trees instead of people. I think Jesus failed with his first response to the Syrophoenician woman.
Right.
Get away from me, you dog.
Right.
That was
yeah.
a human, and Jesus was 100% human. Yes, 100% divine, but
Hmm.
that was a human response that we see.
Yep.
And luckily, she responded to Jesus and says, "But even dogs get table scraps." And I think Jesus goes, "Oh my gosh!"
Yeah.
Like he wakes up
Yep.
and responds in a beautiful way and repents a little bit. I think even. Um, And you could even argue that, man, how many people did Jesus come across and they still rejected him? They still didn't. I mean, even the disciples didn't get it. Um, and so, how can we fail better?
I mean,
So,
there's definitely some good stories on how the disciples kind of fail.
yeah, yeah. Oh,
I
100%,
mean,
right?
like, and I my always like rebuttal is like, if the disciples failed having Jesus right there, like, I think that gives us a lot of space for us to at least try.
Hmm.
Yeah, Peter cuts an ear off. Who's going to sit at your right hand and who's going to sit at your left hand? All of those statements.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I mean, it you see it, and so yeah, why wouldn't we in the church experience failure? So, I kind of look at a few different things in the book. So, being a demon student, you get to kind of have fun, right? You don't have to follow one main tradition. So, I look at philosophy and American pragmatism and a guy named John Dewey and this thing called evolutionary education and how we learn and we grow from experience, like the good, the bad, the failures, the successes, and we change and adapt and adjust. I looked at psychology. A guy named Albert Bandura, and he does a lot of work at did a lot of work at Stanford on phobias um, and failure and different things and how we can overcome that. I looked at Annie Duke's work, who's a gambler. Right, I know we're Methodists. I know we're Methodists, but she was a gambler, and she wrote a book called Little Bets, and basically how church, like how you take little risks. Like you fail, like you're going to fail some, but
Hmm.
you take these little gambles, these little risks. And then I looked at uh, Silicon Valley and a lot of the work that like is being done by IDEO, a company in Silicon Valley that does a lot of innovations and design thinking, and this process of like adaptive leadership and Heifetz from Harvard and a lot of the work that he's doing there, and then finally wound up on a thing that we as Methodists don't always talk about. And I looked at three major failures of John Wesley.
Hmm.
Um, and kind of identified three kind of huge failures in his ministry and life and looked at how he adapted and innovated and adjusted and evolved and how some of the ministries he did later on were all due because of those major failures and the things he learned from those failures that really allowed the United Methodist move or the Methodist movement
Hmm.
to take off.
Hmm.
And then I kind of synthesize it in my last chapter and say, hey, here's how local churches can start to do this. But it's a small, thin, easy read book that I kind of tried to make easy for you to take back to your ad council or your lead teams or your groups to say, hey, let's read this. You can read it in probably 3 hours, like pretty quick, and um, possibly motivate some action
Hmm.
and whatnot. Because something that I've really tried to see within all of my life in ministry is like I value who I am as a United Methodist. Right? I value the traditions that we live into, but I also know that we have to continue to innovate and look forward and take risks um, to not, Greg Jones would call it tradition innovation, right? That we remember who we are and where we've been, and we don't lose that. That's part of our identity, but it helps us move forward into who we can be and who God's calling us to be and inviting us to be in the future.
Hmm.
Um, you know, but
I like that. It's funny that you bring in a bit of gambling theory and whatnot into our space. But that's the thing that resonated with me the most, that I've probably, if I was being honest, have done in my ministry more often than not, but I see other churches and pastors do also, is just betting on the sure thing. Like, we know this is going to work, rather than taking those small risks, knowing that, hey, you got to throw a few things out there, and you may lose, right? You may not hit, but those are the things that are the building blocks to the next thing, to the bigger thing, rather than just the sure bet. Because we can't just be doing that all the time, right? Or
yeah,
we're not
because
innovating. We're just dying at
even
that
the
point.
yeah, I mean, even the sure bets lose,
Right.
right? Annie Dukes in her book talks about how, poker, Texas Hold'em is
Mhm.
what she was talking about and playing. Texas Hold'em is different from chess. Chess is just a series of moves, and nothing really is a gamble, right?
Mhm.
There's a set amount of moves, and if you make the right moves, you win.
Mhm.
But Texas Hold'em, like even when you think you've got a 92% chance that you've got the hand won, you can still lose.
Right.
And um, that's life.
Hmm.
Right? Like even that 92% chance victory or successful attempt in ministry, I could still fail.
Right.
And what do I do when I do fail? And so she would conclude like, hey, we've got to try a lot of things. Like use the power of yes, not the power of no. When someone comes to you with an idea, and that's really how I would say it's been my most successful things in ministry that I've done is I try to say yes more than no, and I try to start things more than stop things,
Hmm.
right? And because when you do that, and I've gone into churches that have had pastors before me that have stopped so much more than they started, and the church is dying, like you said, Zach, like it's just dying. And so, how do we promote life, right? And if we believe the church is a living organism, and it's our people, not our buildings or our spaces or whatever,
Hmm.
well then you've got to multiply, you've got to reproduce.
Yeah.
And if you're not reproducing, if you're not starting new things, you're becoming stagnant and you're going to die.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and that's why I was shocked a little bit. It's like I mean, you were a Duke. You probably should have used Coach K. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, for what he did with like when he started at Duke, like if you look at, I mean, he's got a ton of books on the whole topic as it is. And I think most would say that's probably even why he left, because the game like he just could not continue keeping up with the way college athletics has changed,
yeah,
and I think there is a value to learning from those outside sources of failure, because let's be real, the church doesn't want to talk about failure because that makes us look bad, and we don't want to look bad. We'd rather say
yeah,
everything we do works. And reality, like, I
Hmm.
mean, that's one of the things I love about being itinerant. It may not work here, but it may work at the next appointment
yeah,
or
Hmm.
2
100%.
appointments
Yeah,
down the road, or like
yeah,
whatever. Like it gives us more tools for our tool bag. But I
hmm,
also think that we have to, and I loved how you talked about being permission giving
Yeah.
to help. Like if the pastor's doing all the work, the church dies. Like I will die on
Yeah.
that hill. And
Yes.
I mean, I know I've been in situations where I walked into the first time I met with the church and like, well, the pastor did all these things. I'm like, that's great. I don't do that.
Yeah.
And we need to figure out how we can do this together. I think the church did itself a disservice by thinking that because we have these clergy in these spaces that
Yeah.
they can do all the things where if you put us three in a space, we're all going to lead differently and we all have different gifts and graces that can do amazing things, but we can't be each other like as much as
Yeah.
people think we can be. We each have different callings, we each definitely have different gifts and graces, and I really wish we could help people at churches, like leadership, church leadership, and pastors understand it. Like everybody has to chip in. This can't just be a one person show. And one of the things we try to do here is we try to do no lone wolf ministry and like
Yeah.
literally work towards
Uh-huh.
having people that can bring up new leadership if leadership like
Yeah.
and the whole mentality of that it's not just my thing.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so and also like I'm a big fan of limiting commitments, of saying this is not something you have to commit to for your whole life. Like, how many
Yeah.
times have you walked into church when someone comes to you for the first time and like, I've been leading this ministry for 25 years and I'm done.
Yeah.
And like,
Uh-huh.
but I don't want the ministry to die, so I'm going to stay in.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's help them. Let's develop new leadership for that. Or
Yeah. How about we create disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world, right?
yeah,
How about we live into who we are as United
yeah,
Methodists, right?
Yep.
With my ad council here, or they call it a vision and leadership team here, and this year in my first time of new, you go in and 2 months in, you're having to get new leadership and
Mhm.
whatnot, and that's one of the parts I don't love about the transitions of being a United Methodist pastor. But it was they got the question of who have you been training, like who you're rolling off, but who is it that you've identified that you've brought alongside you that can be your replacement, right? And so I've started to share that kind of mantra of you should always be looking for your replacement, right? You should always be um, looking for someone to take your job, to bring them in, to train them, to teach them the things that you're doing, and essentially creating a disciple, right? And that's our motto, our mission statement, whatever, whatnot. And
Mhm.
but we don't do it,
No.
right? We say it all the time. It's printed everywhere, right? But we've forgotten how to make disciples,
Yeah.
and
Well,
that's
kind of in
exactly
the
what
same
it
way
is.
about how you talked about John Wesley failing, right? Like we talk
Right.
about the one thing, right? Aldersgate Day and his heart was strangely warmed. He doesn't have that without acknowledging his failures, right? Like he doesn't
Yeah.
have that moment with not coming back and being like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like that was terrible.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
yet we frame it around, oh, he had this great experience and his heart was strangely warmed and it was awesome. And then he went and did all the good things.
Yeah.
Well, no, like this
Yeah.
had to happen, or we
Well, and
don't
it
have
took,
this.
it took his failure in Georgia, and he
Yeah,
failed not just in his love relation. A lot of people
right,
boil it down to his love relationship or whatever. No, he
right.
went to Georgia because it was originally sold that he was going to get to go and do ministry amongst indigenous
Yep.
peoples. And then along the way, I think the priest that was there died, and
Hmm.
so he had to become essentially the thing I never wanted to do, which was to be the boring parish priest. And
Right.
uh, he knew that wasn't who he was called to do and be,
Hmm.
and he failed in so many ways there. But he wanted to go be that radical missionary that I wanted to be, right? To go to the ends of the earth and to share God's love with those that were unreachable.
Hmm.
And he fails and he goes back to England and he's hanging out and he walks outside his, front porch in downtown London and he sees the urban poor in London and he goes, "Oh my gosh, somebody's got to do something about this." And so he buys this cannon foundry, and he goes,
Yep.
"Hey, I don't have to go to the ends of the earth to
Right.
that crazy wild place called America. I can reach people that need to know the love of God and that they're loved by
Hmm.
God." Um, right here.
Right.
And then the foundry was the birthplace of so much good that the Methodist Church has done.
Mhm.
And that was just one of the failures in contrast that I look at in the book is just that the failure of Georgia, and I really play off of the aspect of him really wanting to go to the ends of the earth,
Mhm.
and that not working out well, and the little bit of work that he did do with indigenous people groups was not great, right?
No, no.
And not great. And even the little bit of work he got to do there, he failed at. And so, um, but he ends up launching the foundry and doing things radical,
Mhm.
um, and beautiful, and really sets a foundation for the Methodist movement, both in England and here in the United States because of that.
Mhm.
But but yeah.
So, um, you suggested using the book with like your leadership team. And you said it could be like a 3 hour read. You know, would it be more for like the admin council, or should you have like ministry team? Like, like, how would you
You know,
suggest?
it
Like,
could be, if you're in one of those one board churches around here, when I was in Kentucky, a lot of churches were going to the one board structure, right?
Mhm.
So if you've got like the one board, it would be great for them. If you've got an ad council or something like that, maybe it's not your total ad council type thing, but maybe it is your like missions team, maybe it's your local ministries type people that are kind of envisioning how we could do life differently, or maybe it's just taking it to any of your teams that have just become stagnant,
Mhm.
and connecting in with them to just say, hey, like, guys, God is doing something here. We don't know what yet, but God is doing, like, that's very Wesleyan of us. God is moving. um, where is God moving? And how can we join with God and what God's already up to? Like, we don't have to recreate the will, just where is God moving? I had a DS once ask the question. She repeated, it was like her mantra that she repeated over and over and over again. But um, what breaks God's heart? What breaks your heart? And what are you going to do about it?
Mhm.
You know. But it just to me, it gives, this book kind of gives permission and maybe even spark some ideas for people to move from just that timidness or that fear of something not working out to moving into action.
Mhm.
It's also really good for, I would say that pastor that has just felt stagnant, or even that new pastor coming out of seminary that's really looking forward to, they've been so fired up, and they get to the church and it's just like the no's, the we're
Yeah.
not going to do that, and they start to become stifled,
Yeah.
because we all find that, and we think we're going to save the world, and we realize it's going to be a lot harder than we think. um, but um, it's a spark, right? It's not the how-to book, but it's the challenge to say, hey, let's, because I don't think there's not a how-to book that really is successful,
Right.
right?
right.
But it's one to just kind of give you a foundation and hopefully some inspiration to just say, hey, let's start trying some stuff,
Mhm.
um, because right, I feel like before the disaffiliation process of the Methodist Church, it was like we were so just hanging on and close-fisted. But I think this side of disaffiliation, it's like the gates have opened up
Yeah.
and people are moving and doing. I think we're doing things still a little too safe, um, right? Like, so a lot of conferences are putting way more efforts into fresh expressions movements because they're cheaper,
Mhm.
than actual church planting,
Yep.
right? Because church planting is so expensive and it takes such greater risk. Um, and I'm fearful that conferences are going to just stop church planting.
Mhm.
And but we've got to do both, right? But we also have to do church revitalization,
Right.
right? And um, the it's all important, right? We can't just put all our eggs in one basket, but everything,
Mm.
all the ministry, right? Everything's important. All the ministries are valuable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And I've said that out loud a lot here. We pushed into the fresh expression stuff, which something I've been doing for a long time, and the conference caught
yeah,
up, and it's in pushing it almost like you said, almost as church planning. It's like no, 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 that's not what fresh expressions is,
yeah,
right? Like we can't we have to have the both and we have to see how they're different, how they work together, but how they push each other, and
yeah,
who's equipped to do either of those things, right? And
yeah,
that's the scary thing for me is I've been around long enough. Not everybody was a church planner 10, 15, 20 years ago. Right
yeah,
now, it seems like everybody's putting a church planner moniker on their Twitter page, and it's not the same, right? Just because you have a
yeah,
fresh expression doesn't mean you're a church planner, but it doesn't mean you can't get there, right? Or you're not called to it. But let's see how they work together and how they're different. But for and let's quit calling small groups fresh expressions, right? Like let's call them what they are and live into it and equip people to
yeah,
do those things rather than being like, it's shiny.
yeah.
I, I have
Like
big
beer and hymn
opinions
sings
about
are
it.
great. Like they're
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
You
Yeah.
know, it's awesome. I love it,
yeah,
drinking good beer and singing. I live right now,
right.
the church I'm at right now, their parsonage caught on fire before we moved in, and no one was hurt. You know,
Yeah.
all is good, but the parsonage is having to be like totally, essentially remodeled on the inside.
Hmm.
It'll be a brand new house when we get to move in, and that's awesome. Like
Yeah.
excited about that. But they put us in this rental right across from this beautiful garden that grows this wonderful, wonderful beverage called beer. Right,
Yeah.
it's a beer garden, and I thank my church regularly. Thank you so much
Right.
for putting me right across the street from this beautiful garden.
Yeah.
And but and they're good, and they do connect people inside the walls of the church with people outside the walls of the
Hmm.
church. But it's not church planning,
Right.
right? And in some of those beer and hymn sings, it's just people from the church showing up,
Yep.
even, you
Yep.
know. It's
And that's
still not, yeah, it's happening outside the walls of the church, but it's not engaging
right.
Yeah.
people outside the walls of the
Yeah.
church. But
And that's what I found doing it in three bar church specifically in three different uh three, four different, very different communities now. Some of
mhm,
them, yeah, it becomes church for the people outside of the walls. I
yeah,
in rural Montana, that worked really well.
yeah, that's
It
awesome.
was a great mixture of some church folk, it was some great mixture of community folk, and it was a place that I could come in and spend an hour before, spend an hour with my group, spend an hour after, with people at the bar, right? Like, and they knew
Yeah,
town of 150 people, right? Like I walked in the door and they're like, preachers here, like calm down, you know.
yeah.
It was obvious.
And then they get to know you, and they're like, okay, we don't
Yeah,
have to
we're
calm down
fine. We're
anymore,
all
Yeah.
good.
right? Like
Right.
we're good,
Right.
right?
Yeah. And then like here in Bozeman, yeah, it's church people and it's something that they've needed because they've sat literally across the sanctuary from each other for the last 10, 15, 20, whatever years and don't know each other. Right. So it just becomes another place for them to one, come and have the conversation, but to get to know their community. And I kicked myself for a while and was like, this isn't what I want it to be. And then I was like, oh no, it's what it needs to be though. This is what my church community needs, and I'll find something else that goes beyond the walls, right? Like
Yeah,
it's okay. And but for me to call it my church plant or anything that's it's not. I can't build a church on that, but I can
yeah,
strengthen the church that I have because now they have another space.
yeah.
Um,
And
and
it's even become, and I love this because I wish I would have had something when I deconstructed my faith, right? But
mhm,
it's become another tool and a beautiful tool to allow people to enter into a process of deconstruction
yep,
and reconstruction and coming out on the other side where they're made more whole again,
mhm,
not left with a huge hole in
yep,
them.
yep,
And I love that the United Methodist Church's Fresh Expressions movement, to me, many of them happen to give space for that deconstruction and that healing of religious trauma to happen.
Hmm.
And we need that. I
Yeah.
mean, we need that big time, um, because it's there.
Yeah.
Everyone out there has religious trauma.
Yep.
Whether you've
Yeah.
been in the church or not, you have religious trauma.
Yep.
And um, and I think it's beautiful, but in the book, even, it it would promote fresh expressions. It would
Hmm.
promote church planting. It would, but it's just trying to say, hey, just try, like,
Yeah.
just do something,
Yeah.
and don't if it fails, don't be scared. Don't be scared, because there it might.
Hmm.
What can you learn from it, so that whatever you do next, whether it's similar or something totally different, you've learned, you've grown, you've evolved, you become more sanctified. Right? Let's
Hmm.
be very Methodist. Right? You've
Yeah.
allowed that process of sanctification to work, and you've grown. You've become more like Christ in that process,
Yeah.
because you've suffered.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I
and
think
I
this
love
is
that. And I
the
hopped on that soapbox more to identify, well, for a lot of reasons, but to identify, let's call it what it is, right? Like, let's name the things what they are, and that's okay, whether it's fresh expressions or church planning or traditional congregational work. In the same way, like, I'm bad about naming failure. I don't want to fail. Like, I'm an Enneagram 3. I'm not gonna. I'm never gonna. Right? If it doesn't work out, well, we have something to learn from it. But here's what went well. Is always the way I lean.
Yeah.
But as you've kind of unpacked this, of no, let's name our failures. Let's name what didn't go well, what it is. Right? Like, we we
Yeah.
didn't do that as good as we could have, or it didn't work out well. Well, that's a failure, which leads us into the next thing, right? Like, how do we grow on all of that?
Yeah. Like, we're all gonna have. This is a reference to Microsoft. Old Microsoft. This is gonna date me. We all have our Zune,
Yep.
right? We all have our Zune.
Yep.
But we're also all gonna have our Xbox,
That's
right?
right.
We're all gonna have our Xbox,
Yep.
but we're also all gonna have our Zune, and
Yep.
and we just want to forget that and move forward. But what can we learn from our Zune
Mm-hmm.
moments,
Mm-hmm.
right? That just were bad, you know.
Right. Uh, Kari, I love that, man. I can't wait to dig into it, and I'll add it to my stack of books for my leadership, and my small group people, because I think it's the season we're headed into to just throw a lot of things out there and see what we can do, see what works, what doesn't, and how God's calling to continue us to
Yeah.
grow and reach out.
Yeah, and
where
when you fail, you celebrate it, right?
That's
Like,
right.
yay, failure!
Yeah.
Yay, we did it. We
Yep.
tried something. We failed. Good job.
That's right.
Don't beat yourself up. Like one of our greatest job as pastors is, I like what Matt you said earlier, is it's not our job to run the ministries, right? It's our job. I feel like it's my job a lot of times to be the coach on the sideline. I'm not actually doing the ministry. I'm empowering and coaching, and even just being a cheerleader. I was a cheerleader at Wayland, right? Do you remember that,
I
Zach? God help,
do. I do.
God help me.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but right, like that. Some of our job is just to be the best cheerleader on the sideline. Just go, and
Hmm.
oh, okay, you missed that shot. Keep going.
Hmm.
Um, hey, you got blindsided as you were running down the field by somebody. Pick yourself up. It hurt. I know it hurt. But guess what? You've got another play coming.
Hmm.
And here's an opportunity to do something beautiful, right? Because God is a God of grace, of mercy, and not just of second chances, but chances upon chances upon chances. And if we really believe that, then why aren't we doing it in the way that we do ministry?
Right. Yeah. No, that's Yeah, why don't we? Why don't we live into the grace that we believe in, right? Why don't we live into the resurrection we believe in? We believe
Yeah,
we're a resurrection people. Let's act like it, right? Let's
let's act
act
like
like
it.
a
Yeah,
graceful
yeah.
people.
And I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, right? So I'm not just hard on other people, I'm hard on myself.
Hmm.
And in this research and in the process of learning, or at least trying to learn how to fail better, I don't say I fail great still, but I feel better. It's that, hey, I've got to give myself, and really it's me. I've got to give myself more grace because I'm harder on myself
Yeah.
than anybody else is.
Mhm.
Um, and so how do I live into, Zach, in your words, how do I be a resurrection person better and give myself some grace?
Yeah,
But
I love that. We got a lot of work to do, man. All of us.
But
yeah.
we're on a journey towards perfection, and we're not perfected in this life. And so we move towards that, right?
And sometimes the failure feels like we've experienced glorifying grace, right? Like
Yeah.
we've died and we've moved on to glory, and we
Yep.
just pray, God, just take me now.
Take me
Yeah.
now.
It's gonna hurt, right? It's because we put you put your soul into it,
Yeah.
not just your blood, sweat, and tears. In ministry, you put your soul in it.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that's what makes it so hard, right? Like we're bad at just grieving anyways, the things we should grieve. But uh, there's a good bit of grief that comes with failure, right? Like all of the
Yeah,
things that we tell ourselves in our head when we're being hard on ourselves, like I shouldn't be doing this, I can't do this, why me? In top of offering grace to ourselves, allow ourselves to grieve.
yeah.
Man, that
Lament,
sucked.
right?
Yeah,
We've got a whole
exactly.
book in the Bible. We've got to lament,
That's
but we
right.
don't we don't. And I'll be honest, I don't preach from that book very often. I
Mm-mm,
don't.
mm-mm.
But maybe we need to learn how to and that's even to myself. Maybe I need to preach on that book more. But we need to give ourselves grace
Yeah.
and lament our failures to be able to heal and move forward. But
Hmm. Yeah. I love that.
Well, we've definitely taken up a lot of your time, and I know we probably could just sit here for hours to do this.
Gladly.
And so I want to definitely honor your time and maybe Zach's. I don't think he's doing anything today, so but definitely want to give him space to go do whatever he needs to go do.
I wish
It's
I was
he's got
almost
the
going
Colorado
skiing, but
Rockies shirt on, so I mean,
yeah.
he doesn't he's got all the time in his world in the
That's
world.
right. I got all the time to
Yeah.
experience failure and grief all day long.
But when I was in Kentucky, I became a Cincinnati Reds fan, and I
Right?
I live in that failure as well. And even when there is hope, you fail.
Yeah.
Growing up in Texas, I was a Cowboys fan. Was right, key was,
Yes. Yes.
and you just live in the constant state of, hey,
Yep.
failures reality.
Yep. That's exactly right.
But,
It
yeah.
teaches
But
you
thank you
hope.
guys. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I love the work that y'all do. So thank you for this opportunity.
So where would
Yeah.
be best places to find the book?
So you can get it on Amazon, Cokesbury. You can go to Whip and Stock is who published it, so you can go to Whip and Stock's website. But really, I mean, any Barnes and Noble, like wherever it's not cool enough that it's actually in stores, right?
Yeah.
Like every Barnes and Noble, like the few times I go in Barnes and Noble, like I always go
Mhm.
to the like
Is
secretly
it
go to the
is it
religious
there?
section. Like I don't want to be seen there, but I go over and I'm like, maybe they've got my book.
You don't complain, but like, where's my book? Like it should be
Yeah,
there.
no,
What you
no,
need to do
but
is just take one in and put it on the shelf.
just put it on. Yeah, and then they'll ring it up and be like, hey, this isn't in our
This
system.
is not a thing.
Yeah, but I've always wanted to like go into a bookstore because it's been out about a year and a half now or so, maybe a year, and um, I've always wanted to go in and like sign the book on the shelf, right, and
Yep.
then put it
Yep.
back. Never, yeah, it's never happened, right? Never, but that's okay. But you can get it anywhere, and it's very available. I would say, hopefully you buy it before December of 26, but December of 26, Whiff and Stock always puts like 80%, 90% of their books on 50% off. That's always a good time to buy it. But and it's on Kindle, it's digital wherever.
Nice.
So
Well, listeners, we're definitely thankful for you for listening, and you can find all that. Check out his book online, and you can also pick up a couple of Bearded Theologians items as it's getting close to Valentine's Day. What a great way to show someone you love them by getting them a Bearded Theologians
That's
mug
right.
or shirt. I think that's a great way to show love. And so, for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
And like this video and push that thumbs up.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on all social media outlets. You can check out old episodes and more information at beardedtheologians.com. Thanks for checking us out.